And as you mentioned, care economy, and you might have gone through the whole paper, just care and support economy strategy paper on the draft strategy. What are your first few takes on, or your views on the paper? As a 10-year strategy, and we understand it takes time and it's an evolution, what are the things then, we need to worry about before we, think of aggregating? Or what are the things needs to be managed? What are the risks to be taken care of?
I think there's a couple of conceptual things that I think we need to probably overcome. Mm-hmm. The first one is that an aggregation of workforce ultimately, I think, is trying to be intended to deliver a more efficient worker model where, an individual worker can one day work in the aged care sector, the next day in disability, the next day in health or veteran affairs or similar, which is a very laudable process. I think the challenge with that, though, is making sure that there's enough workers to support all of those sectors. Mm-hmm. And look, we've certainly seen that play out during the early days of the scheme and even to today, based off where pricing sits for any particular model or service sector. We see the workforce shift and move. Mm-hmm. So, using intermediaries as an example, we saw about 8% of our workforce leave our sector last year and go into adjacent sectors because support coordinators have really struggled with, keeping costs under control, particularly when, their price limits and price caps, which are set by the agency, haven't changed for 4 years now. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the things that will be difficult is how do you balance competing monetary and funding priorities in the context of a fully agile workforce. So I think there's some intergovernmental discussions that need to happen to ensure that workers are able to move and have that flexibility, but also recognise that the requirements of a worker in the disability space are different to that of a worker in aged care or in health or veteran affairs or similar. So I think it's how do you set that base level of quality, audit, compliance, etc. But then how do you have that micro-credentialing? And I think that's one of the really key things that the paper is starting to call out is how do we actually say, well, here's the fundamental care principle, and then how do you bolt on top of that different skills and expertise?